These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Welcome to The Beautiful Bag. This is your host, LeeAnne Hayden, cancer survivor, and more importantly, ostomy lifer. Each and every week, I'm going to be bringing a special guest or some inspiration for you and a few little stories along the way so that you can learn what life is like for us to be living in an ostomy and why we all think it's a beautiful bag. So listen in and let's get started.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Beautiful Bag. I am here with Brock. We met back when I started working with Hollister. Brock is lucky enough to work for Hollister Incorporated, which is the company that I use and I'm associated with the supplies that I use. And I know a lot of you out there are always asking questions about supplies and things like that. So, and Hollister is one of my favorites, the only one I've ever used. So, but we were on a call one time, we did a focus group and Brock was on the call and we all learned that he was in an ostomy as well. So it was an amazing thing to hear that someone who actually works for the company is in an ostomy as well. So Brock, welcome to the show this week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really glad you're here. Really glad you're here. So we just had a really good, interesting conversation, which we're not going to get into on this, but it was just really interesting to know some of the things that we always have to go through. And then it's just like, wow, oh my gosh, this is what life is like in an ostomy. So, Brock, let's jump into it. Why don't you share with the audience, what led you into your ostomy and how long ago was that?
Yeah, so I was funny enough, I was diagnosed with Spina Bifida. It's a neural tube birth defect. But I wasn't diagnosed until the age of 10. And so as a small child, I did have some bowel issues, and it was essentially attributed to a number of other factors than what the actual cause was. I ended up hitting puberty very young. I hit puberty at 10 years of age, and that actually is a symptom of having spina bifida. We tend to hit puberty at a young age, and both my feet started turning inwards. And so we went to a neurologist, and it was diagnosed as spina bifida. And from that time forward, both my bowel and bladder continued to cause me trouble, if you will. So I've been using intermittent catheters since the age of 10. And I went through every iteration of what a bowel routine could look like, as well as having bowel accidents as a kid. So when I was 16 years old was the first time I heard the word stoma or ostomy. And, 16-year-old boy, very interested in the opposite sex. The idea of having a bag was a nightmare. And so I actually opted to have this procedure called a Chait tube or a cecostomy. And so they actually put a small tube into my cecum, and that's kind of a one-way valve where your small intestine turns into your large intestine. And I would actually do an enema from the top down of my colon.
Oh, wow.
The problem was for me, the way my neurology was set up is essentially my rectal sphincter was locked in the off position. And so I put all this fluid in, and then having a bowel movement could take up to 2 hours. It was very uncomfortable. And this was back before the days of iPads and iPhones. And so, sitting with a crossword puzzle in the bathroom for 2 hours by yourself every other day was really not that enjoyable. So I did that for a number of years. I had a spinal cord operation when I was 19 years old. It was my fourth one. And we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And so I had two very good friends living in England at the time. And they said, if surgery goes well, you're coming to see us. And if surgery doesn't go well, and I was worried I might lose the function of my legs at the time, they said, we're going to come back from our trip. And so fast forward 6 months, my walking's better than ever. I packed up my bags and I went to England. And I lived in a tent for 3 months. And in order to do this procedure, and we traveled everywhere, we went all across the UK. But to do this procedure every other day, I had to find a bathroom. And it was either an outhouse, youth hostel, an overpriced hotel room. And I did this for those 3 months. And I got back from that trip and I realized, that would have been a much better trip had I had an ostomy. And so that was sort of the genesis and what made me realize that having an ostomy was actually going to give me freedom rather than taking it away from me. So it's been 22 years now.
That's awesome. And you said something right there, like something that's the biggest, most important thing. It gave you freedom. And I think a lot of people look at, oh no, an ostomy is the last thing, that you ever want, because it'll take away from you. You lose a piece of you, it'll take away from you. Whereas, like you said, if you were in an ostomy and traveling like that for 3 months, you would have just emptied a bag or changed a bag and kept going.
Yeah, it truly gave me freedom. And what's so interesting is I remember the first year after doing it, I had a breakup with a girlfriend. There was a learning curve. And I sat back a year into it and I thought, you haven't had a single bowel accident in a year. You haven't had hundreds of hours wasted in a bathroom. All you've had is freedom and enjoyment. And so really it made me realize that this really was the best life decision. And funny enough, it's kind of what guided me on my life career and my life path.
And it definitely has. And you said it's been 22 years now, huh?
Yeah, it was December 18th of the year 2000 is when I went in for ostomy surgery. So I got my stoma for Christmas that year.
Well, Merry Christmas to you.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. So let's talk about that, because you were young. You were how old? You said 19, 20?
I was 19 when I made the decision. I had the surgery the year I turned 20. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're going to go through, 22 years. Now you're married, a wonderful wife and everything else. And what was that like, being young, getting into, relationships and dating and all of that? What was that like for you?
At first it was a challenge. Again, I was with somebody when I had the operation. Things didn't work out with us. We were, I was 20, self-conscious and young. And so I put a lot of focus on myself, both on fitness and mental mindset. And I realized that how others would perceive it was, for the most part, exclusively tied to how I presented the situation. So if I presented it as, oh, I got this icky, gross thing going on, versus I had a life-saving procedure and I'm in front of you today and I'm the person I am because of the decisions I made. It changed that attitude. People saw things in a different light, because perception is reality. And if I perceived that I had this horrible, awful thing that had happened to me, well, guess what? Those I expressed or shared it with were probably going to have a similar reaction. And so I took the opportunity to say, no, this was a good thing. Having the surgery has allowed me, more opportunities in life. I'm able to go out. I don't have to worry about having accidents or having to carry all this equipment to do this procedure. It really freed me from the shackles of my condition and allowed me just to truly discover myself, which was awesome.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Now let's walk down that path a little bit though. So you said you did it through, fitness and mental mindset. What are some of the things that you did? Let's start with fitness. What are some of the things that you did from a fitness standpoint that helped you?
Well, the number one thing was, and I a little bit of background. I raced wheelchairs at a national level in high school. I stopped in my early 20s after I had the last back operation. But fitness and sports really were a confidence booster for me. But because I've had so much surgery throughout the years, the one thing I knew, and I've gone through it recently, I just had another shoulder reconstruction, was it takes time, and that you gotta remind yourself that Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't rush things. You have to go slow and mark those little milestones, because they do add up and they get you to where you want to be. And so I was always a very fit individual, but I never had the sort of six-pack abs. And I remember my surgeon saying, well, kiss that goodbye, you're never going to get there. And I said, no, I'm going to do that. And so I had set this goal, but I set it in a tangible and achievable way, that you've had surgery, you first need to recover. Okay, now that you've recovered, what's your plan? You're going to make sure that you're not risking a hernia. You need to go slow. You need to check in with your physician. And so I mapped out this quest to get to where I wanted to be physically. And I know you've done some fitness competitions, and I kind of got there. I looked in the mirror. I said, okay, this is cool. Now where's the cheeseburger? Because it was a lot. It was a lot. But it was more about conquering something I was told I couldn't do. And that was the challenge, right? They've said I can't do this. I tend to be stubborn and want to meet my goals. And so I did it very much for myself, but it showed me again that I could achieve anything, even with having an ostomy in place.
And right there, right? And you're funny, where's the cheeseburger? I remember it, because once you get to that, everybody thinks that when you get to that position and you can see your abs and you can do all this stuff, that that's the way you can stay there, and you can't. Like, you drink a glass of water after a fitness competition and your abs are gone. And you really want the cheeseburger, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's another thing, we got to be aware of when people are even like watching the people on the covers of the magazines, right? That's not reality. That's real. That's not reality. But so it gave you the freedom, and like you said, you needed a challenge. Like, it was a challenge that you went after. So it was one thing, but you did so doing, achievable goals and steps along the way, right? And giving your body forgiveness, right? So you said you let your body heal first, and then you took the next step into the next process of your fitness journey. And it's good that you took it slow and you checked in with your doctor, because we don't want hernias, and hernias, it's easy to get a hernia with our condition. So we do have to be a little more careful. Now, that must have fed right into your mental mindset, right? So, I mean, you seem to be the type that watch me, right? You say, I can't watch me. I'm going to show you I can, which is very, very helpful. But what were some of the things that you did for your mindset, for your mental health?
Yeah, I think taking the time to focus and meditate, and also a lot of reflection on anytime I would have a moment of saying, like, oh, why did I do this? It was looking back on experience or timelines or opportunities that I had missed out on because my health was holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that because of the decision, and again, I had elective ostomy surgery, because of the decision to do what I did, I could have done all those things in that moment, in that time, and I had missed out on it. And I've been very blessed that I've been able to volunteer in the past at the Canadian Youth Ostomy Camp up in Bragg Creek, Alberta. And one of the things I love so much about that experience is they allow teenagers to come to camp who haven't yet had an ostomy but need to have one. And so there's an opportunity for those who were essentially me at the age of 16 to see other kids partaking in activities when maybe they can't because they had an accident or they need to go do a procedure, but they're watching other kids out participating, swimming in the pool. We play basketball. The boys are playing bags versus shirts rather than shirts versus no shirts. I mean, the humor comes out, the opportunity to feel part of a community comes out. And so I've always had a very soft spot in my heart for that experience, because I wish I had had that opportunity earlier in my life. I probably would have gone through fewer years of suffering had I seen others thriving in that situation.
Yeah. Now, how do you think that we can get the word out more that there is access to these types of camps or these types of things that people can go to and talk to other people and see and be part of it prior to? What do you think there's something, what can we do to help get that word out there?
I think one of the opportunities is sharing on your own social media. You're able to go out and pull both photos, media, clips from both the youth rally, is what it's called here in the United States, and the Canadian Ostomy Camp. But sharing other people's experiences and asking local chapters and individuals to donate, even if it's just a little bit, because that gives the opportunity for a kid to get out there and see what life is like, either with an ostomy or someone who's just gone through the procedure or had the procedure for a number of years. Get to have that peer experience and do things maybe they wouldn't have done. We take them whitewater rafting. We have a high ropes course, a rock climbing course. We go mountain biking through the woods.
Wow.
I mean, we take these kids out and they leave that camp with a renewed sense of confidence, not just for them, but also for their parents. We've had a number of parents who say, I think camp did as much for me as it did for my son or daughter. I've been so nervous because they had health concerns. And now, of course, I see them come back with a raised sense of confidence.
Yeah. And confidence is key, especially confidence is key, as a child growing up and leading into an ostomy is just an additional thing for them too. Right. So, having access to that. So I'll put some links as well to the camps inside the notes for any listener that's listening and wants to, donate, volunteer, or find some more information on it. I'll put the links to both the youth camp, the youth rally, and the one up in Canada as well. So let's talk about, being part of a community. Where did you find, aside from volunteering now and being part of that, you said you wished you would have known it when you were younger. When you first had your ostomy, what did you do to find the community that you have now for yourself back then?
I have a bit of a different path. So I was wearing a product at the time and had a really bad leak one night. Friends had a party. We're all, of course, drinking of age, over 20 in Canada. And I woke up and I basically wrecked a mattress. My appliance had leaked in the night. I didn't wake up and I was really embarrassed. And so I actually started this little small company called Active Lifestyle Products, and we manufactured a product called a Sure Seal ring. But for me, it was this opportunity to find a way to give back to people so that they didn't go through what I had gone through. And so I made it a point to make a small documentary back in 2002 that overviewed what it meant to have ostomy surgery and live with an ostomy. We included the Canadian Ostomy Association of Enteral Stomal Therapists, which is now the NSWAT group, as well as a number of different individuals across Canada who shared their story. And so I had this really unique opportunity to actually travel around Canada and go to different chapter meetings and share this story and hopefully inspire others to start sharing their story so that, people who are going through the journey behind them feel like they had a leg up.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. And to be able to do that. I mean, now we look at it, we have social media, right? So now it's, thank goodness that, there's great things about social media. Some not so much, but some just are great. And I think I've had my ostomy for almost 7 years now, and it's, social media is where I found everybody.
Yeah.
Social media. And that's the only way. Other than that, I wouldn't have known anybody. I know nobody personally aside from the people that I've met, through social media and then through the podcast, that have been in an ostomy. So it's sometimes you do feel a little bit alone. So again, it's making sure people know that they're not by themselves. There is community out there.
Yeah. And there's still a number of different ostomy chapters all across the continental United States. And I think for some of the younger folks, there's a hesitation to go in person and spend time with people who've had an ostomy. And sometimes there's a perception or a bias that everyone's old at these chapter groups and I'm going to have nothing in common with them. But I challenge people to get out there and meet their local ostomy community and understand that you have more in common than maybe you realize, and that you can maybe not only take something away, but also you can leave some nuggets of wisdom to help somebody who maybe is a little bit older, who's more reserved in their thinking or not willing to put themselves out there because of preconceived notions of what others might think. You as a younger individual who has social media, who has taken the opportunity to share, could have a profound impact on someone who's a little bit older than you. So I still attend the occasional ostomy chapter meeting here in the local Illinois area, and I encourage others who are listening to try and do the same.
Yep, because the more you get the word out, the more that people won't feel so alone. I've had people listening to this podcast and listening to people's stories, and then they read it because they read it in a newsletter. They're not on social media, right? They have nothing to do with social media. So they hear something on a newsletter, read it on a newsletter, and then listen to the podcast and start listening to these stories, listening to our stories, and their lives change. I mean, there are people that will stay in their homes and not leave their homes because they're in an ostomy. And it's, the more we talk about it, the more we meet people in person, the more we talk about it out online, the more we can connect with people, more people will know that they're not by themselves. So
absolutely. And I think too, when people leave the hospital, depending on their experience, especially if they've had laparoscopic surgery, they may have had a very, very short hospital stay. And so the opportunity to do multiple pouch changes, for example, with a clinician present who's had the experience to teach you, or just going back out into the wild, if you will, without substantial training. I always equate getting a stoma as an adult to essentially going back to the potty training days, where guess what? You don't remember how miserable you were at the age of 2 when your parents said no more diapers. You need to learn this thing called the toilet. You weren't happy about it. And it's very much the same thing, right? Your doctor or your clinician or your healthcare provider has said, listen, we have saved your life in one way or another, and you need to learn how to manage this on your own. And you're not happy about it. And so being able to take ownership over that process really is a catalyst to getting back to feeling like yourself.
It is. And dealing with things like you talked about the leak that you had, right? So you're with friends, you're having drinks, you're just being you're a young adult, and, you have a leak and you ruin a mattress, and it is embarrassing. And it's how do you suggest people overcome that? I mean, you took that and just twisted it into, I'm going to create a product so this doesn't happen to me anymore. And I had an accident when I went to Italy in the spring. And it was probably the third one I've had in the six years at that time that I had my ostomy, and it was in the hotel, and it was just in the sheet, and I was just wrapped up the sheets, threw them, took a shower, got out, cleaned up, went back to bed, and was like, okay, that was that. I'm in the hotel. All that's taken care of over in the corner there, and having to just deal with that, but it does happen.
Yep. And I think that's probably going to be the biggest mental hurdle is overcoming the fear of an accident or the fear of a product failure. And I think preparedness is almost the best thing you could do. You've joked with me, I haven't ever showered without my appliance on, but if you were to, for example, get in the shower and just pretend, for example, that you were out in public and pull it off and let it fall on the shower floor and say to yourself, okay, now what do I do? What are the steps to get through this experience? If you can kind of set yourself up with a game plan ahead of a problem. I've learned in my life, like I have a pump in my car. I've never had a flat, but I'm prepared in case I have one. So if you have the plan in place, you almost emotionally feel like you're less likely to have that problem. And so the fear of it happening to you kind of gets pushed to the background because you have a plan. And so, I really do believe in planning ahead. And so if you can take the time to plan out, okay, if I had one of these catastrophic experiences, how would I handle it? And if you have that plan in place, you're prepared if it's ever were to happen, but you've also now pushed the anxiety out of your mind because you're prepared.
That's really key. That is really, really great advice. I walk around, I have an extra bag in my purse. I have an extra flange in my purse. The flange is now cut because I had an accident at one point and the flange wasn't cut and I didn't bring my scissors. So I literally used my teeth to rip a hole to put it back on, had no choice.
Yep.
But those are some of the things that you learn, along the way, like you said, and being prepared. And I still think you should take a shower without your bag on. You're going to love it.
Well, it's funny. Like when I started at this company, we dressed fairly formally, but I always wear a sports coat when I'm out at any event, and not everyone does. And everyone always says, oh, you're always so dressed up. And I'm like, no, I need pockets. I got a spare barrier. I got a spare pouch. I have a catheter or two. Like I am prepared for the evening. And because of that, I can go out and have a lot of fun and not have to think so much about the, air quotes, medical condition. I'm just able to be myself because I've prepared myself for essentially any situation.
Yep. That's smart. That's really, really smart. So now I'll know why you have your suit coat on. Your suit coat on. You just like dressing up. Who are you kidding? No, I love that. So, what is there anything else that you would want to let the listeners know?
I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to be yourself, and by that I mean this ostomy is now a part of who you are. I'll give a big loving shout out to my wife, and when I knew that she was the right person for me was, we had a couple dates. She came over for dinner at my house. She had asked a number of questions, and she said, do you have a pouch that I could put on? I'd really kind of like to understand what it's like, your mindset. And I mean, those were like wedding bells going off in my head right there. I said, wow, this is someone who is truly empathetic and understanding and wanting to know what my experience is like. And that's not to say all your friends should be going out there and putting on a pouch, but it's okay to like share what you're going through and answer questions. And that doesn't happen overnight. Again, you need to sit down and think about maybe some of the questions you may get asked and have answers you're comfortable giving out.
Wow. So she literally put on a pouch.
Yep. She put one on. We put a little soft banana in there and called it a poop, and she wore it for a couple days.
You know something, and you put a ring on that right away. I hope. I bet you were like, no, this is it. This is my woman.
We actually just had our ninth wedding anniversary 2 days ago.
Oh, happy anniversary!
Thank
Oh
you
my
so
gosh.
much. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh, that is wonderful, and what a wonderful person to be empathetic like that, to actually ask. So that brings up a question. When did you start to think, this is a person that I can have this conversation with?
So that's a funny question because
Mhm.
as you highlighted at the beginning of this conversation, I do work for Hollister Incorporated.
Mhm.
And I was actually in Toronto on the roof of the Park Hyatt Hotel. We were having a summer sales meeting, and her and a friend walked out on the patio, and we caught each other's eye. And I asked if they'd like to come over and join us for a drink. And as we were chatting, she said, "Oh, why are you here?" And I said, "Oh, I work for a company called Hollister." And the eyes lit up because she had at the time had a 15-year-old nephew, and Hollister t-shirts were really hot at the time. And so I had to explain, no, I don't work for that Hollister. I said, we make products for people who have ostomies or continence care needs. And she simply asked, oh, how did you get into that business? And so it was a bit of a catalyst for me to kind of share that, this was also my personal experience and what got me involved in the industry. So for me, sharing that was a bit brought on by what I do for a living, but I do remember sharing with friends before I got into the industry, and a story that I'll share pre-ostomy. But again, I've been using catheters since the age of 10. And so I worked at a summer camp for 2 years, the age 16 and 17. And I hid my medical condition from everybody and literally lived with 12 guys in a cabin, 48 staff total. There was four staff cabins, 2 cabins, 12 boys each, 2 cabins, 12 girls each. And I hid the fact that I used catheters and had to do this flush thing for the entire summer. And so it would have been just before I turned 18. We were going on a road trip, me and a couple of the guys from camp. And I said, I gotta share something with you guys. I said, I have this medical condition, and I have all these supplies that I take with me, and this is the situation. And one friend said, oh, okay. Do you need some extra room in the trunk, or what can we do for you? And I was blown away. And then the other friend said, yeah, I know. And I said, what do you mean, you know? And he said, your mom and my mom are very good friends. I've known this for years, but I knew that I needed you to come to me and tell me about this. I didn't want to bring it up. I wanted you to be comfortable to share. And so that was a real turning point in my mindset, because I realized that this was not something that had to be some deep, dark secret. People were more understanding than maybe I gave them credit for. And how that worked out in my favor was, as time went on and we'd go out, in the middle of summer to, let's say, a nice patio somewhere or a bar, my buddies would each stick a couple catheters in their pockets for me, so I didn't have to bring a backpack. So,
oh, how awesome are they? See, people care. People really do care.
Yeah, and I've met people I've dated where it was too much for them, and I thought, better to have that detector up front than find out something like this many years down the road in a relationship. So I've always seen it as a it's always been a positive in my life. Especially when we got the stomach flu, someone's running to the bathroom and I'm still sitting on the couch.
Seriously, I say that all the time when people when at first they were like, I'm sorry, I feel bad, whatever. And I'm like, don't feel bad. I'm great. I go, next time you're stuck in traffic on your way to work and that coffee kicks in and you're squeezing your butt cheeks and it's starting to get really painful and the sweat's coming on and that whole fear and that feeling like you're going to crap, it's going to happen, you're going to poop your pants. I go, just think I'll be sitting next to you being like, what? I don't have that problem. I got a bag. That's when you'll want my bag.
There have been moments where, yes, or even, going to a public restroom and you look down, you're like, I don't have to sit there. Perfect.
Nope, don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Don't have to wait and be like, my son's so cute. He's so cute. He's 25 years old now, but his whole life, he's just, I got to go take a poo. Like, he has to announce it to everybody, but he won't do it in public. He loves doing it at home. He hates doing it anywhere else. And he looks at me, he's like, Mom, I kind of wish I had a bag because I could poo anywhere. I'm like, yeah, because I was 6.5 years. So he was 18, I think 18 years old when I got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing how people, they understand, they want to take care of you. They want to be your friend. And like you said, some people, it was too much for them, and that's okay. Cause that's part of life anyways, whether you're in an ostomy or not, you're going to be someone's person or you're not.
Yep.
People come and go, and it doesn't make that difference. So this has been such a great conversation, Brock. If there was one thing that you would leave the listeners with, what would that one thing be?
I think it's to not be afraid to do the things you did before surgery, but also to try new things. I'm actually going to Vancouver at the end of the month to give a talk to a group, and the topic is travel. And so highlighting my personal experience, I spent a number of years on our global marketing team, as well as working in a national role in Canada and a national role here in the United States. And so I've been very fortunate that I have seen a lot of the world through my role, and I've traveled a lot, and that means lots of airports, lots of trains, lots of hotels, lots of car travel, and not to say I'm not going to do these things because I have an ostomy. I've tried new experiences. I did a triathlon. I can't run, but I can ride the hell out of a bicycle, and I can swim. And so I called up the organizer and I said, look, I'm going to be in a totally different class and I don't care. I'm going to swim, I'm going to cycle, and then for the running portion, I'm going to use my racing wheelchair, because that's what's going to allow me to compete. And I just had a Ziploc bag with a spare set of supplies just basically in my back pocket the whole time. Because again, I was just prepared, God forbid, right? I think too, if you're nervous to travel, get on the airplane or get on the airline's website and book yourself a seat closer to the bathroom. Do the things that are going to alleviate the stress that will then allow you to get out and do the things you want to do.
That is perfect. And that is a great way for us to end this week's podcast, this week's episode. Brock, thank you so much for being here with us this week.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity to connect with you and talk with your listeners.
Absolutely. Now, if someone did want to connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so if you want to connect, you can reach out to me either on Instagram. It's Brock Ness Monster with 2 R's. You can leave that in the comments, or you can reach me at Hollister. It's brock.masters@hollister.com.
Perfect. And I will leave both of those in the show notes as well, so everybody can find you and reach you if they have any questions.
Wonderful.
So thanks again for being here with us this week.
That was great. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this podcast, get the behind the scenes at LeeAnneHayden.com/ostomy updates. And also, if you found this episode encouraging, please screenshot it and share it on Instagram. And don't forget to tag me and also the person who was on the episode with me. I occasionally will do special gifts for anyone who does do a screenshot and share it on Instagram or in your stories. Also, lastly, please go to Apple or Google, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to keep up with them every single week. I enjoy you guys. Thank you so much for being here.